Hi everybody, my name is Jessica Holyfield and I'm a professional dance choreographer and dance educator based out of the southeast of the United States. And we're going to be taking a look at some excerpts from the first episode of Road to Kingdom. It is the 90-second preview of each group or each team. And what's really fun is that I had the beautiful opportunity of reacting to the full episodes of this particular show. So a lot of my feedback, analysis throughout all of the challenges that you're going to be seeing released onto YouTube are going to be with that in mind. If you want to see these before they get released on YouTube, then Patreon is a really great place to see them, as well as if you want to see my full episode reactions and commentary that is refined to that, that'll also be there. So without further ado, let's go ahead and check it out. Golden Child. Here we go. Beginning. Nothing screams new start than crawling on the floor, right? You crawl to a stand, man. Love it. Help your neighbor up. I love that. Ooh. This track goes so hard though. I like that. That was fun. What an angsty finish. That was a fun finish. Okay, so from the top here, like I said, I'm going to be able to look at their intention or why they chose what they chose, because they normally do a little description like that in the episode. So we're going to take a look at that when I watch the episode. But here, how they start, it's a very fun start because you have half of them that are kind of leaning against each other. And then you have about half of them that are crawling to help be an aid to getting them up. So that was a really nice organic way of transitioning to a different formation. So my outside people wake up first. They're crawling, and I like that they're all slightly different. They all need to get to where they need to at a particular time, and they slowly get our guys and they come up. And I like the fact that our guys don't like scoot in and then stand up. Like they hinge it and make it a moment like they're being pulled up by force, which is really nice, and it helps carry the tone of not being fully there, which is a great start. And then notice some people had, you know, it's nice that they had a little bobble of like, am I awake? And then they dropped into something such a drastic texture choice, which is more of a it does appear some people are going for more of a reverb, some are more rebound. No, those are different. A reverb goes from a big to, and it kind of chills out. Others go from the equal amount of energy going in, equal amount of energy going out, a rebound, right? So that was really cool. Notice some people did have more of like a floppier hand versus more static with a different technique in play. So that's just a little note, observation. Ding, 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 ding. Now here, notice in this beginning, boom, really nice militant approach here. That was a really great start from them. They also end up having a center point where they do some form of ISO, like an ISO where somebody is doing kind of a hand signal and everyone is complimenting it. And we'll talk about that there and why it may look a little different than what you saw from the boys. That little boom, da-da-da. Now notice right here, he takes it, that right there, boom, boom, boom. The reason why that may not have felt as clear, it's not because of the lighting, but it's because of the range and how he chose to do it. So notice it did feel like he was trying to go and create a full circle rotation, but it did feel a little bit cut off. And so knowing where the head is, it wasn't quite clear where we were wanting to finish with that head. And also we could tell he was controlling, but it wasn't that crispness that what you saw from this kind of position that you saw from the boys. So that's why that's different. It's because he didn't fully commit, or it wasn't really that. It was mostly there was how they started it to that particular position Let me actually see if I can slow this down so we can really like actually see it, hopefully. That ding ding, he cuts it across the diagonal versus bringing it over and creating a linear point. He goes through a diagonal, which is why it felt a little different. Is that wrong? No, because I mean, it looks justified. So I don't really have many qualms with that. And it was such a short thing. And I like this rebound dropping, and it kind of has this ping pong effect. My one thing, of course, is if you really wanted to make that like super crisp, making sure everybody rebounds and comes up in energy to rebound to the other side the same way. Coming up, bringing it through like that hinge around to the drop. They have beauty in numbers, man. This is some of these groups, the amount of people they have, wild to me. Yeah, boom, boom. Now, I do feel like that even in this full cam, I mean, I cannot believe, like, there's a part of me that's going to be like, whoa, on how they're going to cut this for the episode, because it's already a bit hard to follow in the full cam. So that's interesting. That ding, 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 boom. Notice I paused it. We have some guys that their range is a little bit off. It's just one person, really. Everybody else is pretty close. It's more of a forgiving kind of angle discrepancy. This one's a little bit trickier because you're in a completely different kinespheric range. That little da, da, da. And then we pull through. Now they're here. Dun, 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 dun. Notice it goes boom, dun, dun, boom. Then they're hitting the syncopation that's happening behind that. Dun, 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 dun. They're hitting what's happening behind it. And that was a really nice moment to see there. And they're pulling through, boom, boom. So they're taking a very militant approach. You have these like ponies that we're about to see, the transition, that part right there. These lights are freaking sick. And that makes it build up the energy, and they're hitting and matching the energy of the bases that they want to hit collectively, which is nice. That little boom, 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 boom. Now here, I do wish, it's cool the aerial shot, but I want to see what technique he uses, because it does look like he's about to do a vibration. That little brrr, I want to see how they hit that, but it's hard to in the aerial shot. So that would be my note for the camera work. Turning it through. Now, my note for this, and this is something that I actually talk about whenever we give feedback. Very limited experience giving feedback in this realm, but there's a lot of crews, especially in HHI, that I've noticed that heavily use dubstep. Now, here's a really tricky thing to think about. When you look at dubstep, you have to think about the type of sound production it is, and a lot of it's very artificial, but a lot of the movements and techniques that you use outside of animation and popping they're more organic. Like waving is a very organic style of movement because it gives the illusion that your body is water, which is a very nature based kind of movement. And when it comes to this type of track, it feels very animated, right? Robot animation techniques, those types of things, NPC, those like the drill sound, it does require a lot of justification of usage of those types of popping techniques. And the one thing that I always kind of heed caution to for a lot of dancers is when you choose to use universal extremity motions outside of actually diving into the uniqueness of the dubstep sound, it can be really tricky on a musicality side because there's a disconnect between the movements and your predictability and how you choose to hit that movement. So for example, in this case with our guys here, there is so much density and there's so much in layers, but how they're hitting it is very predictable. When they're hitting the bass with a heavy accent, but they're not using other parts of the formation to justify the other parts of the layers that are intact. So it can feel like their movement is getting overpowered by the fullness and density of all the sounds that are happening in the track. And also because with dubstep, it's not technically affiliated with hip hop or the street scene, it's a different culture. So you're already placating a little bit in that regard as well. And it's just very fascinating and very interesting to discover and find. Just like with contemporary and with those types, like very like concerto, the orchestra, it doesn't really come from the street culture. So you have to heed with that type of caution, just like with, you don't want to water down movement, but you also don't want to have your music overshadow your movement either. And it's really hard to combat dubstep. It just is. And so that's why we always kind of heed caution when you do choose to use dubstep. You have to bring something innovative to the table in order to justify it outside of animation and robotic technique. So that's kind of my little short spurt. I'm still very much growing in my justification of it, but it is something that is a growing awareness that I've seen, and this is a great example of what I'm talking about. If this would be something I would heed caution to them on, because if you notice, I'm even going to 0.75 it just so I can talk while they're moving through it. You hear that drop, that bass, all that little brrr. I wasn't really able to see anything that justified that sound. This part, that whirl, like all of that, that whirl is still happening even when that accent is taking place. And notice that da 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 boom do 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 do. Now that kind of situation, they built up that pitch do 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 boom 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 boom. But what happened here is they took it to the outside in, and then they tried to hit the percussion, but it wasn't landing. And even this is brrr. Now that right there, I know they're trying to hit it with a little wave and then boom with the wave. They're taking an ambidextrous groove approach to the type of track, when for that type of situation, that brrr, brrr, it needs to, they look too human doing dubstep. Does that make sense? And that's kind of my overall point, is you have to create the character, the demeanor of what works with it. And it's hard. It is so hard. It is hard to do well. It is. That even that, notice that little shroom, because they justified it in the first run, because they justified it using waving, they needed to keep using waving throughout that type of timbre, or continue to build it, just like you still hear it in its integrity and in its form, because they ambidextrous it in the groove. Then you want to be mindful of how that brrr, 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 you still hear it, but they just hinged it, so it kind of felt like we depleted the energy output of the sound you're trying to hit. Does that kind of make sense? This is such a tricky thing. I've never really had to explain it in this way before, and I'm still growing and learning to articulate it more effectively, because it's so tricky. That little boom, that even right here, that boom. And notice they're just moving and moving, and only having one person justify that sound. But when you hear that there's multiple harmonies, not harmonies of that sound, but there's multiple layers of that sound now present compared to the first time. And remember, the first time you heard this sound tunnel, this little vrr, vrr, you had multiple people justifying it, but then all of a sudden we're only having one person justify the sound in that brr, that choppy, staticky kind of integrated vibrationary texture. That's why it feels a little bit depleted. Now, if they started here and then they built up the energy and the brrr, brrr, it would have resonated better, I think. Man, this is so interesting to have to talk about. Brrr, brrr. Here's the thing, what they're doing is absolutely fine. I love what they're doing. My point, though, is just something that I would heed caution to. That's why it may, because if you take the lights away, because a lot of times when I look at routines, they don't have lights that help with it. And also, when you think about it, the lights can help justify those sounds more, because though they can have that brrr, they can make those types of lighting cues to really help make their movements. Like in the ponies, all those lights that were happening really helped with the rest of the sounds being represented, which is why that part felt as full as it did. But here the lights aren't helping them as much. These two lights in the corners, but they need more saturation across and in front of them, just like they did earlier, to really help with this section and this breakdown. That part was really nice. Da-da, boom, boom. That was fun. Yep, and then boom, da-da-da. And then drop it down. So this part's really fun. So I love having those two in the opposition. Usage of the formation is really nice with the switch. Boom, and I love that gun. The walk forward. That was nice to see too. So notice that we don't quite have as many sounds represented. It's not as full. So that's why it works when you have these two people, because it's boom, boom. It's more manageable with less people when you don't have so many overwhelmingly difficult timbres to justify, I think is my overall point too. You have to, there's beauty in numbers, and there's a reason for that, because a lot of times, just like when you have a lot of people doing really full things on a really intimate track, can feel too overwhelming with movement, the opposite can happen. And I feel like we saw just little symptoms of that here. The music was so full and loud, not loud in volume, but loud in density, and the amount of quantity of timbres and tonal colors represented throughout the sound production and the artificial sound production. That's really, really hard to navigate, just period. So having multiple people on it is what's going to make it most effective and mostly full. And if I were to give an example of a group that uses dubstep pretty decently, would be ID. It's like ID. Oh my gosh. Hold on. I gotta figure out their name. Figured it out. Young ID. They were, I think I saw their set in 2022, and they do a fantastic job of showcasing manipulating dubstep to where it's practical for their routine and their choreographic wheelhouse. So that would be the group Young ID, YUNG-ID. They're from New Zealand. Check them out. That's an example that I would use, like a practical example of one that I think that they are pretty effective and they do a good job on it. Now, but moving on with this group, they do a really good job of justifying here with the 2. Then they throw it down. Once again, you have them all build, and boom, love the build of the energy of the bass. So you can very clearly hear that bass here. Yeah, that little boom, 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 really like using the chest on that. Love the partner work here, and I love that it's kind of universal and expanding throughout the entire stage. Super cool. Then right here, dun dun, whoa, really nice, see that? Yeah, boom, 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 nice. But do you hear all this, like it's like building, 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 but because they're kind of staying midline, it's hard for us to feel that build with the choreo because there's no levels that are representing that build like we saw level-wise earlier. And that's the tricky thing. That's so tricky with dubstep. It is. That right there, boom, boom, you know. That right there, cool. I like the fact that they interlinked. It was a really great way to initiate within that phrasing of the dubstep track. Yeah, boom, boom. I really wish it was closer on the camera so we could see them use that head ISO into that. Yeah, that little, for me, they are treating it more of a whole count instead of the, like really, really getting in the music. Like we're hitting the down bass, like the downbeat of the sound, but we're ignoring the intricacies and the details, which is why it feels more simple. Does that make sense? I think that's another thing too. A little whirl and the pull was just nice, and then they all fall down, boom, and then we finish. Now, does it discredit how they performed? Absolutely not. I think they did a fantastic job with the numbers that they had, usage of levels, great spacing, great staging. I really appreciated that they tried to build the energy. I think their costuming really helped too. Their beginning was really nice, and I really appreciated their ending. So the bookends were definitely in check. That middle, that's probably why, if you ever felt in this particular routine, it felt a little bit underwhelming when the music was so captivating or it was so like full, that could be why. It's because a lot of their movements were not hitting and holding on to the music in some parts, but they were in other parts, so it wasn't as consistent. So that would be my overall note for this one, but they did a really good job nonetheless. This was pretty good. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch. If you want to see more, let's say I don't quite have all of these released yet at the time of me recording this for this video, Patreon is really a great place to really showcase that, but if you are an individual who's just okay with waiting to see them released every day on YouTube, I'm excited for the discussions that are going to naturally follow. Can't wait to find who is your favorite group from Road to Kingdom, and it is okay to go ahead and set some spoilers as well because I've already seen the entire show, so there's nothing that's going to catch me off guard in terms of who wins this, that, or the other. So once again, my name is Jess. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch, and I will catch you on the flip side. Bye.